The sacred circle blazed with bonfire light as I stood before the entire Timber Ridge pack, my hands shaking as Dante's fingers closed around my arm with deliberate force. Smoke filled my lungs while hundreds of eyes stared at me with cruel anticipation. "Look at her," Dante's voice boomed across the silent crowd, his hold growing uncomfortable until I winced. 3 years I've wasted on this broken thing, hoping she might become worthy. He pushed me forward with such force that I lost my balance, falling to my knees on the stone altar. "Shift," he commanded coldly, his presence looming over me. "Show them what you really are." Tears burned my eyes as I reached desperately for the wolf that should live inside me, my whole body trembling with the impossible effort. Nothing. Empty silence where my wolf should howl. The crowd erupted in harsh laughter as Dante pulled me upright by my shoulders. "Worthless," he declared, his voice carrying across the circle. "A defective omega who drains our pack's strength, eats our food, breathes our air while giving nothing in return." He released me abruptly, causing me to stumble backward. "I reject you, Scarlett Morrison. You are nothing to me." The pack's voices rose in agreement, their words cutting deeper than any blade. Someone's disapproval splattered mud near my feet. Others called out cruel suggestions about my future. Through the agony of complete abandonment, something impossible stirred in my chest. The ancient trees surrounding us began to pulse with warmth I could feel in my bones, their branches reaching toward me like protective arms. Whispers that weren't quite words filled my mind, promises of power, of belonging, of terrible revenge. At the crowd's edge, silver eyes locked onto mine with shocking intensity. A stranger who watched my destruction with fury burning in his gaze, as if my pain physically hurt him too. Recognition flared between us so fierce it stole my breath, a connection deeper than blood or pack bonds. Then he vanished into the shadows, leaving me with the certainty that this wasn't the end of my story. As Dante claimed sweet, fertile Omega Lily as his new mate, kissing her where everyone could see, rage crystallized into diamond-hard purpose in my chest. The forest whispered promises of power beyond shifting, beyond their narrow understanding. Let them think me broken. Let them celebrate my destruction. Soon they would learn that the most dangerous wolves are the ones with nothing left to lose. I press my back against the wall of Alpha Dante's office, hoping that for once my defective status will work in my favor, making me truly invisible as the pack members pass by. 3 months after my public rejection during the Harvest Moon ceremony, I perfected the art of moving like a ghost through the main lodge, keeping my head down and my scent muted, another strange benefit of being unable to shift. The humiliation of that night still burns through me whenever I close my eyes, Dante's cruel words echoing as he demonstrated to the entire pack exactly why an Omega who couldn't shift wasn't worthy of being his mate. Today, though, I have a purpose beyond merely surviving. Ruby slipped me information this morning about suspicious documents she glimpsed while serving breakfast to Dante and his inner circle. Something about land acquisitions from smaller packs that didn't sound entirely legitimate. The scent of pine and authority lingers in the Alpha's office, mixed with something subtler. Deceit has its own distinct aroma, slightly metallic and sharp, that makes my nose wrinkle as I carefully sort through the papers on his desk. Nothing seems unusual, just standard logging contracts and territory maps. But Ruby's information has never been wrong before. My fingers trace the edge of an ancient territorial map mounted on the wall, following the boundaries of Timber Ridge territory. Something about the frame catches my attention. It sits too far from the wall, creating an unusual shadow behind it. The distinctive sound of approaching footsteps sends me diving into the supply closet, barely managing to pull the door closed before someone enters. Through the sliver between door and frame, I watch as Dante himself strides to the map, pressing his palm against a hidden mechanism that causes the entire wall to slide sideways, revealing a secret room behind it. The scent of dust and old parchment wafts toward me as Dante disappears inside. My heart hammers against my ribs. I've stumbled onto something significant. When he leaves minutes later, I count to 100 before daring to approach the hidden entrance. The mechanism isn't difficult to locate, a simple pressure plate disguised as a territorial marker. Inside, the small room holds shelves of ancient-looking documents, maps with markings that show territory expansions far beyond what Timber Ridge officially claims. My fingers tremble as I examine one folder labeled Whispering Pines Acquisition. It contains magical binding contracts with signatures that seem to shimmer unnaturally on the page, paired with what are clearly forged documents filed with the Pacific Northwest Territorial Council. I've found evidence of systematic territory theft, sacred grove destruction hidden behind legitimate-looking paperwork. The weight of this discovery presses against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. Dante isn't just expanding his logging operation, he's using magical coercion to steal land from smaller packs, destroying sacred groves that have stood for centuries. As I carefully photograph the evidence with my phone, a plan begins to form. The weekly lumber shipment leaves tomorrow for the coastal territories. I could smuggle copies of these documents to the forest guardians who've been investigating Dante's expansion. It's risky, but for the first time since my rejection, I feel something other than shame coursing through my veins, purpose, righteous anger, and an unexpected connection to these ancient territories being violated. I slip from the office with my stolen evidence, making my way toward the lumber mill where I hope to find Ruby. The afternoon shadows stretch long across the compound as I duck between buildings, avoiding the more populated areas. When I reach the mill, however, the scent of unfamiliar wolves hits me, not Timber Ridge pack, something wilder and more elemental. I press myself against the rough wooden exterior, peering through a gap in the planks. The basement level is dimly lit, but I can make out several figures examining timber markings and talking in hushed voices. One of them turns, and my breath catches, silver eyes gleaming in the half-light, the same ones that caught mine during my rejection ceremony. The stranger from the forest guardians, here in Dante's territory. Our eyes meet through the gap, a jolt of recognition passing between us. Something electric and undefinable pulls at my core, a strange awareness that makes no sense given that we're strangers. His nostrils flare slightly, likely catching my scent as his expression shifts from surprise to concern. He gives an almost imperceptible shake of his head, a warning. Before I can process what's happening, a heavy hand lands on my shoulder. "What are you doing out here, Scarlett?" Vincent Torres, the security chief, his voice deceptively casual though his grip is anything but. "Just looking for Ruby," I manage, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the fear coursing through me. "She asked me to meet her after her shift." His eyes narrow slightly, but he seems to accept my explanation. "Kitchen staff left an hour ago. You should head back to your quarters before curfew." He releases me, but his gaze follows as I walk away, my back burning with the intensity of his suspicion. As I round the corner, I catch one last glimpse through the gap. The silver-eyed stranger is watching me leave, his expression unreadable but intense. Despite the danger of my discovery, despite the evidence burning a hole in my pocket, I feel something I haven't experienced in years, a fragile, dangerous hope that I'm not as alone in this fight as I've always believed. "You've been avoiding me, little Omega." Dante's voice slices through the quiet morning air as I arrange breakfast trays in the kitchen. I nearly drop the silverware I'm polishing, my heart leaping into my throat as I turn to face him. It's been 4 days since I discovered his secret archive, 4 nights of smuggling evidence to Ruby, who has contacts with the forest guardians. His scent, pine and dominance with that metallic edge of deceit, fills the small space, making it difficult to breathe. "I've been completing my assigned duties, Alpha," I respond, keeping my eyes appropriately lowered though everything in me rebels against this show of submission. He moves closer, invading my personal space with deliberate intimidation. Interesting that those duties seem to include snooping around my office after hours. His fingers grip my chin, forcing my gaze to meet his. The pack might think you're worthless, but I've always known you're more observant than you appear. Fear floods my system, icing my veins, but I force my expression to remain neutral. I don't know what you mean. I was organizing your filing system as requested. The lie tastes bitter on my tongue, but I keep my heartbeat steady. Another strange benefit of my inability to shift is that wolves can't read my physiological responses as easily as they can with normal pack members. His eyes narrow, darkening to amber as his wolf rises closer to the surface. Vincent saw you at the lumber mill. What were you looking for? Before I can formulate a response, the kitchen door swings open and Ruby enters, stopping short when she senses the tension. Alpha, the council representatives have arrived early for your meeting, she says, her voice carefully neutral though I can smell her anxiety. Dante releases me with a final warning glance. We'll finish this conversation later, Scarlet. The reprieve is temporary, and we both know it. After he leaves, Ruby hurries to my side. The documents you found, they reached the right people, she whispers, voice barely audible. The forest guardians are bringing evidence to the territorial council today. Hope flutters in my chest, quickly dampened by dread. Dante suspects something. He knows I was at his office. Ruby's dark eyes widen with fear. Then we need to get you out of here before. The alarm howl cuts through our conversation, the distinctive three-note call that summons all pack members to the central gathering area. Ruby and I exchange a worried glance before hurrying to join the others. The central clearing is already filled with pack members when we arrive, but something is different. The scents of unfamiliar wolves mingle with our own, and I recognize the formal attire of the Pacific Northwest Territorial Council representative standing on the raised platform beside Dante. My blood turns to ice when I spot Vincent Torres handing something to Dante, my phone, with the incriminating photograph still on it. A hush falls over the gathering as Dante steps forward, his face a mask of righteous anger. I've called this emergency session to address a grave threat to our pack's security, he announces, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. Scarlett Morrison has been caught stealing confidential pack documents and conspiring with outsiders against Timber Ridge interests. The accusation hangs in the air, dozens of eyes turning toward me with expressions ranging from shock to vindication. I step forward, chin raised despite the fear churning in my stomach. The documents show illegal territory seizures and sacred grove destruction, I counter, my voice stronger than I feel. Dante has been using magical coercion to steal land from smaller packs. Murmurs ripple through the crowd, quickly silenced when Dante holds up my phone. See how easily she fabricates these wild accusations? Her defective nature has clearly affected her mind as well as her shifting abilities. Solomon Cross, the Territorial Council head, steps forward with practiced authority. These are serious allegations on both sides. The council will review the evidence and render judgment. What follows is a mockery of justice. Dante presents my photos as doctored images, brings forth witnesses who testify to my unstable behavior since my rejection, and systematically dismantles every piece of evidence I've gathered. The council members nod along, their expressions carefully neutral though I can smell their complicity, the same metallic tang of deceit that clings to Dante. Just as hope begins to fade entirely, a commotion at the edge of the clearing draws all eyes. A tall figure pushes through the crowd, his silver eyes immediately finding mine across the distance. The stranger from the Forest Guardians, now dressed in the formal attire of a pack representative. The Forest Guardians request permission to present evidence in this matter, he announces, his deep voice carrying an authority that even Dante cannot ignore. Solomon Cross looks displeased but gestures him forward. State your name and purpose, Guardian. Jasper Thornwick, representing the interests of affected territories in the northern regions. He steps onto the platform with fluid grace, and though his demeanor is calm, I can sense something powerful and dangerous beneath the surface. He begins presenting corroborating evidence of Dante's territory manipulation, satellite imagery of destroyed groves, testimony from displaced pack members, magical analysis of the forged documents. For one beautiful moment, I believe truth might prevail. Then Solomon Cross clears his throat. While these allegations are concerning, they require further investigation before action can be taken. He turns to Dante, completely ignoring Jasper's evidence. However, the theft of confidential pack documents by a member is a clear violation of territorial law, regardless of intent. The judgment falls like an executioner's axe. Scarlett Morrison, for the crime of treason against your alpha and pack, this council sentences you to banishment in the Forgotten Grove. Gasps ripple through the assembly. The Forgotten Grove is a cursed section of ancient forest where exiled wolves lose their way forever, a fate considered worse than death. This is an outrage, Jasper protests, his sense spiking with anger and something protective that makes my wolf, silent and dormant though it is, stir in response. The evidence clearly shows, the council has rendered its judgment, Solomon interrupts, signaling to the enforcement wolves. Two betas grasp my arms, beginning to drag me toward the northern boundary where the Forgotten Grove begins. As they pull me away, my eyes meet Jasper's across the clearing. In that moment, something passes between us, a silent promise, a connection I can't explain but feel with every fiber of my being. His silver gaze holds mine until the last possible moment, filled with determination and regret. The last thing I see before they push me across the boundary into the misty darkness of the Forgotten Grove is Jasper being restrained by council enforcers, his expression fierce with a promise I barely dare to hope might be kept. The mist wraps around me like a living thing, its tendrils seeping into my clothes and hair as I stumble deeper into the Forgotten Grove. I've been wandering for what feels like hours, though the unchanging twilight makes it impossible to know for certain how much time has passed. The enforcers who escorted me to the boundary hadn't bothered with final instructions or warnings. Everyone knows what happens to wolves banished here. They become lost, confused by the grove's disorienting magic until they either waste away or turn feral, their minds broken by isolation and the forest's peculiar enchantments. The air here tastes different, ancient and heavy with secrets, carrying scents that shouldn't exist, summer flowers in what should be autumn, salt water miles from any ocean, and beneath it all, the faint metallic tang of old magic. "You'll join us soon enough," a raspy voice calls from somewhere to my left. I spin toward the sound, peering through the swirling mist. A gaunt figure crouches beneath a twisted oak, his eyes glowing with an unnatural yellow light. His clothes hang in tatters, and his movements are jerky, more animal than human. They all do, in the end. The grove takes what it wants. I back away slowly. "Who are you?" The man, wolf, whatever he is now, tilts his head at an unnatural angle. Third beta of the Silver Creek pack. Or was it River Bend? Can't remember now. Doesn't matter. He lets out a sound between a laugh and a howl before darting away into the mist, his cackling laughter echoing between the ancient trees. The forest plays tricks on my mind, the mist forming shapes that mimic my deepest fears and shameful memories. I see Dante's sneering face as he publicly rejected me, hear the pack's mocking laughter amplified until it becomes a physical force pressing against my skin. "Worthless Omega," the mist seems to whisper in Dante's voice. "Can't even shift. What use are you to anyone?" My foot catches on an exposed root, sending me tumbling down a steep incline I hadn't seen through the fog. I land hard at the bottom, pain shooting through my ankle as I struggle to sit up. Looking around, I find myself in a small ravine, the walls too steep and slick to climb easily. For the first time since entering the grove, I allow myself to feel the full weight of despair. Everything I've fought for, the evidence of Dante's corruption, the hope of justice for the smaller packs he's destroyed, all of it meaningless now. A tear slips down my cheek, then another, until I'm sobbing quietly into my hands. Don't give it what it wants, a familiar voice calls from somewhere above me. I freeze, holding my breath as I scan the misty ravine edges. The grove feeds on despair. It's how it breaks you. The voice is deeper than I remember, roughened perhaps by the forest's influence, but unmistakable. Jasper? I call out, hardly daring to believe. How, they found evidence I was helping you, he answers, his voice coming from the opposite side of the ravine now. The council considered it sufficient reason to exile me as well. The bitter irony in his tone makes me wince. I'm sorry, I whisper. I never meant to drag anyone else down with me. There's a long pause before he speaks again. You exposed corruption that's been poisoning the packs for generations, Scarlet. Don't apologize for that. Something about the way he says my name sends a shiver through me that has nothing to do with the grove's chill. I can't see him through the thick mist that hangs between us, but his voice becomes an anchor in the swirling confusion of the forest. Have you encountered others? I ask, shifting to find a more comfortable position against the ravine wall. A few, he replies. Most are too far gone to hold a conversation. The grove's magic affects everyone differently. Those with the strongest connection to their wolves often break first. The dissonance between what their senses tell them and what the grove creates becomes too much to bear. An unexpected benefit of my defective nature, perhaps. What about you? You're an alpha. Shouldn't your wolf be fighting the grove's influence? His laugh is soft, barely carrying through the mist. My particular abilities make me somewhat resistant. Not immune, but I can see through some of the illusions. The mist swirls between us, occasionally parting just enough to reveal shadowy shapes of the ravine's far side, but never enough to see Jasper clearly. Tell me about the forest guardians, I say eventually, needing to focus on something beyond our dire circumstances. What are you really fighting for? For a moment, I think he won't answer, but then his voice comes again, quieter now but somehow more intimate. We protect what others have forgotten, the ancient bond between wolves and the forest. Before territories were divided, before packs became corporations more interested in profit than preservation, all wolves understood that our strength comes from the land itself. His passion resonates through his words, warming something inside me that has been cold since my rejection. Dante isn't just stealing land, Jasper continues. He's severing connections that have existed since the first wolves walked these forests. Each sacred grove he destroys weakens the bonds between our kind and the natural magic that sustains us. As he speaks, I find myself leaning toward his voice, drawn by the conviction behind his words. For the first time, I notice something odd. The mist seems less oppressive around me, as if retreating from the space between us. You felt it, didn't you? He asks suddenly. Even before you knew what he was doing. You sensed the tree's pain. I'm startled by his perception. How did you know? I saw you that day at the lumber mill. You were touching the cut timber, and your expression, he pauses. Most wolves would have smelled the resin and aging wood. But you looked like you were hearing something entirely different. A memory surfaces, the strange whispers I sometimes thought I heard when walking among the oldest trees in Timber Ridge territory, sounds I dismissed as imagination. I thought I was just making it up, I admit. Another defect to add to the list. Not a defect, Jasper says firmly. A gift, Scarlet. One rarer and more valuable than you know. Close your eyes and imagine roots extending from your body into the earth beneath you, he continues. The grove's illusions only affect what you see and hear, not what you feel. I settle more comfortably against the ancient oak that's become my shelter, pressing my palms flat against its rough bark. Following Jasper's instructions, I slow my breathing, imagining energy flowing through my fingers into the tree's core. At first, nothing happens, just the same emptiness I've felt since my wolf never emerged, the hollow space inside where others sense their animal counterparts. Then, unexpectedly, something shifts. A whisper touches my consciousness, not words exactly, but impressions, age, depth, patience spanning centuries. My breath catches as the sensation deepens, a slow tide of awareness spreading outward from the tree beneath my hands to others nearby, forming a network of consciousness that pulses with quiet intelligence. I can feel them, I whisper, making my voice tremble. The trees, they're alive in a way I never understood before. Through half-closed eyes, I see the mist around me begin to change, patterns emerging where before there was only chaotic swirling. What do they tell you? Jasper asks, his voice carrying an intensity that suggests this is more than a simple meditation exercise. I listen deeper, surrendering to the ancient rhythm that seems to harmonize with my heartbeat. They remember, I murmur, images flowing into my mind. This grove wasn't always forgotten. It was sacred once, a place where wolves and trees existed in perfect balance. Something happened, a betrayal, a breaking of faith. The trees responded by creating the mist to protect themselves. The connection strengthens, revealing more. Each illusion has seams, places where reality shows through if you know how to look. As this realization forms, the mist around me thins slightly, revealing pathways I hadn't noticed before. With trembling fingers, I trace a pattern in the air that matches what the trees are showing me, a gesture of respect used by ancient wolves when entering sacred spaces. The response is immediate and astonishing. Moonlight streams down through a sudden break in the perpetual twilight, illuminating a narrow path that leads upward from my ravine. The light coalesces into something solid, a bridge of pure moonlight spanning the chasm between my position and where Jasper's voice has been coming from. Scarlet, Jasper calls, his voice filled with wonder. What did you do? I rise shakily to my feet, hardly daring to believe what I'm seeing. I'm not sure. I just listened to what the trees were telling me. Cautiously, I place one foot on the moonlight bridge. It holds firm, solid as stone beneath my weight though it looks like spun silver. Step by step, I cross the ravine, the mist parting around me as I move. When I reach the other side, I finally see him clearly for the first time since our exile. Jasper stands before me, tall and powerful, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight that now surrounds us both. The sight of him steals my breath, he's more magnificent than I remembered, his presence commanding yet gentle as he watches me approach. Even in the disheveled state that exile has left him in, there's something regal in his bearing, something that calls to a part of me I never knew existed. You're a tree speaker, he says softly, awe in his voice. One of the rarest gifts among our kind. He steps closer, then stops himself, clearly restraining an impulse to touch me. The air between us feels charged, humming with an energy I can't explain but can definitely feel, like electricity dancing across my skin whenever he's near. Is that why I can't shift? I ask, the question that has defined my entire life suddenly taking on new meaning. Jasper shakes his head, a smile touching his lips. Not instead of shifting, it's a different kind of transformation. You don't change your physical form, you extend your consciousness into the forest itself. He gestures at the moonlight bridge I've created. This is ancient magic, Scarlet. Magic most wolves have forgotten how to access. I look down at my hands, seeing them with new eyes. All my life, I thought I was broken. Defective. When I look up, Jasper has moved closer, close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating from him. You were never broken, he says, his voice dropping to a deeper register that sends shivers down my spine. You were waiting to awaken. Something in his expression makes my heart race, an intensity that suggests he's holding himself in check. I find myself swaying toward him, drawn by an inexplicable pull that seems to originate from my very core. The moment stretches between us, fraught with possibility, before Jasper clears his throat and steps back slightly. "We should practice developing your abilities," he says, his voice carefully controlled. "If you can communicate with the trees, they might show us a way out of the grove." Though disappointed by the broken connection, I nod in agreement. Over the next hours, Jasper guides me through exercises to strengthen my newfound connection to the forest. He teaches me to distinguish between the grove's deceptions and the true paths hidden beneath them, to read the age and wisdom stored in each ancient trunk. As night falls, a true night, not the artificial twilight that usually blankets the grove, we make camp beneath the shelter of a massive oak whose branches seem to curve protectively over us. "How did you learn so much about tree speakers?" I ask as we share the meager provisions Jasper had managed to bring into exile with him. He hesitates, his expression growing distant. "My grandmother was one. She taught me to respect the old ways, to understand that our relationship with the forest is meant to be symbiotic, not exploitative." His hand absently traces patterns in the dirt beside him. "When Dante's lumber operation destroyed my family's ancestral territory, her grove was the first to fall. She died within days of the trees being cut." The pain in his voice reaches something deep inside me, and without thinking, I place my hand over his. The contact sends a jolt through us both, his eyes meeting mine with startled intensity. "I'm sorry," I whisper, genuine empathy flowing through me. For a moment, we remain connected, something unspoken passing between us. Then Jasper gently withdraws his hand, though his eyes remain on mine. "Tomorrow, we'll begin your real training," he says softly. "The trees have chosen to reveal themselves to you, Scarlet. That's a rare gift, and our best chance of escaping this place." As I drift toward sleep beneath the watchful branches of the ancient oak, I feel something I haven't experienced since long before my rejection, a sense of belonging, of rightness. The emptiness inside me where my wolf should be doesn't feel like a void anymore. Instead, it feels like a space waiting to be filled with something different but equally powerful.
I watched Scarlet communicate with an ancient oak, her face serene with concentration as her fingers trace patterns across its gnarled bark. After 2 weeks of training, her abilities have developed at a pace that leaves me both astonished and wary. No tree speaker in recorded history has advanced this quickly. It's as though the forest has been waiting for her, eager to share its secrets after centuries of silence. My wolf stirs restlessly within me, increasingly difficult to control whenever she's near. The primal instinct to protect, to claim, grows stronger with each passing day, though I fight to maintain professional distance. We can't afford distractions, not with the new moon approaching. Our best chance of escaping the Forgotten Grove while its magic is at its weakest. "They've agreed," Scarlet says, opening her eyes. "The oldest trees will create a pathway for us during the new moon tomorrow night, but we'll have to move quickly." Pride swells in my chest, though I try not to let it show too obviously. "You've accomplished in days what takes most tree speakers years to achieve." She smiles, a rare full smile that sends my heartbeat accelerating. I have a good teacher. I clear my throat, refocusing on our escape plan. The trees might be willing to help, but the cursed barriers will still be active. That's where my abilities will come in. I step toward a nearby shadow and concentrate, letting my consciousness sink into the darkness. In an instant, I'm standing 20 feet away. Scarlet gasps, her eyes wide. "That's incredible. How do you do it?" I return to her side. Shadow paths exist in a space between realities. They bypass magical barriers because they technically exist outside them. I don't mention how each use drains my energy, how the repeated traveling during our escape might leave me vulnerable. As we finalize preparations, Ruby arrives with supplies from Timber Ridge. "Dante's accelerated his plans," she reports. "The lunar logging ceremony has been moved up. He's planning something big, possibly involving all the remaining sacred groves." Scarlet's face pales. We need to stop him. After Ruby departs, an uneasy silence falls between us. The enormity of tomorrow's task weighs heavily. The Forgotten Grove has never released its exiles. Our attempt will either make history or add us to the long list of those who've perished trying. We should rest, I suggest. Scarlet sits beside the small fire, flames dancing in her eyes. If something happens to me tomorrow, promise you'll continue the fight against Dante. The thought of her not surviving sends a surge of panic through me. Nothing will happen to you, I state with more force than intended. I won't allow it. I move to kneel before her, close enough to catch the subtle floral notes in her scent. We both make it out, or neither of us does. The intensity of my declaration hangs between us, revealing more of my feelings than I'd intended. The new moon creates the perfect dark canvas for our escape attempt. Scarlet stands at the grove's edge, her eyes closed as she communes with the ancient trees. The forest responds, branches shifting, roots lifting, creating a barely visible path through the seemingly impenetrable vegetation. "Now," she whispers, reaching for my hand. The contact sends electricity shooting up my arm as we step forward. The first barrier appears as a shimmer in the air. "Hold tight," I murmur, pulling Scarlet against me as I wrap us both in darkness. Her body fits perfectly against mine as we slip between realities, emerging on the other side. The journey continues until we reach the final boundary. The air thickens, pressing against us with malevolent force. The grove knows we're leaving. Scarlet gasps. It's fighting back. I reach for the shadows, but they slip away, insubstantial against this final defense. "The trees," Scarlet murmurs, her eyes distant. "They say there's another way." She places her palms against what appears to be solid air. "Lend me your strength," she asks. I place my hands on her shoulders, feeling her draw power from the connection. The trees around us begin to groan, ancient trunks bending to create an archway. Through it, I glimpse the forest beyond. As we move toward this escape route, a territorial spirit materializes, a spectral entity formed from the grove's collective anger. It lunges for Scarlet, and without thought, I throw myself between them. Searing pain tears across my chest, but I manage to push Scarlet through the archway before collapsing. When I regain consciousness, I'm lying on soft moss outside the grove. Scarlet kneels beside me, tears streaking her face as her hands press something cool against my wound. "You idiot," she whispers. "Why would you do that?" I try to smile. Alpha instinct. Protect what's valuable. Her hands still against my chest, her eyes widening. By the time we reach Ruby's waiting vehicle, I'm barely conscious, leaning heavily on Scarlet. As we drive toward the Forest Guardian Sanctuary, I decide she deserves the full truth. "There's something you should know about the Forest Guardians," I say. "I'm not just a member. I'm their alpha." Her expression shifts from surprise to something more complex. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would have changed how you saw me." I counter. "Would you have trusted me the same way?" She shakes her head slightly. "Probably not. I've had enough of alphas and their power games." Despite my pain, I find myself smiling. "That's why I didn't tell you. I wanted you to see me, not my position." I feel Scarlet tense beside me as the full scope of our operation becomes visible. "This isn't what I expected," she murmurs, taking in the thriving community below. My chest wound throbs painfully as Ruby helps me from the vehicle, but I manage to stand on my own, unwilling to show weakness before my pack. As Alpha, I must project strength even when I feel none. "Welcome to Verdant Heart," I tell Scarlet, watching her expression shift from surprise to wonder. Guardian sentries approach, their postures immediately deferential when they recognize me despite my weakened state. Alpha Thornwick, the lead guard, greets me, then notices my injury. "You need healing. Victoria has been alerted to your return. Scarlet steps closer to me, her protective stance not going unnoticed by the sentries, whose curious gazes linger on her a moment too long. "This is Scarlet Morrison," I announce, letting a hint of authority color my tone. "She's under my protection and will be treated with the respect due to an honored guest." The title feels insufficient, but anything more would invite questions I'm not ready to answer. Questions about the inexplicable bond forming between us that even I don't fully understand. The next hours pass in a blur of medical treatment and debriefing. Victoria Sterling, our ancient druid consultant and healer, tends to my wounds with practiced efficiency, while Scarlet watches from the corner of the healing chamber, her expression guarded. When Victoria's weathered hands pause over the spirit-inflicted injury, her eyes narrow with interest. "This wound resists conventional healing," she observes. "The Grove's territorial spirit marked you." Her knowing gaze shifts to Scarlet. "Yet you escaped. Remarkable." Later, after Victoria has applied poultices and binding spells to my chest, I convene an emergency council meeting. Seated around the living tree that forms the centerpiece of our gathering hall, my most trusted advisors listen intently as I explain Dante's accelerated timeline and the urgent threat to the remaining sacred groves. Scarlet sits beside me, quiet but observant, studying each guardian with wary assessment. "This is the tree speaker you found?" Elder Blackwood asks, his skeptical gaze fixed on Scarlet. "A wolfless omega from Timber Ridge." Before I can respond, Scarlet straightens in her chair. "I may not have a wolf elder," she says, her voice calm but edged with steel. "But I heard the ancient oaks of the Forgotten Grove when no one else could. Judge me by my abilities, not by Dante's limited assessment of my worth." A surprised murmur ripples through the council. Few outsiders would dare address an elder so directly. I suppress a smile as Blackwood leans back, reassessing her with newfound respect. As the meeting concludes with plans to monitor Dante's movements, Victoria approaches us. The tree speaker will need proper training if she's to help counter Dante's plans, she states, her ancient eyes fixed on Scarlet with keen interest. "I'll begin working with her tomorrow." After showing Scarlet to guest quarters adjacent to my own, I retreat to the solitude of the great mother tree at the heart of our sanctuary. My wound aches, but the physical pain pales compared to the conflict raging inside me. As Alpha, my focus should be solely on protecting the forest and my pack. Yet since meeting Scarlet, my priorities have shifted in ways that both exhilarate and terrify me. I press my palm against the great mother's bark, seeking the clarity she often provides. Instead, I receive a surprising impression, warmth, approval, and something that feels remarkably like encouragement regarding Scarlet. Communing with her too? Scarlet's voice startles me from my meditation. She stands a few paces away, moonlight illuminating her slender form. Despite her obvious exhaustion, she moves with quiet grace as she approaches. "I couldn't sleep," she explains. "This place, it's overwhelming. I can feel the trees everywhere, whispering." I nod in understanding. It takes time to adjust to their constant presence. Victoria will help you build mental barriers. Scarlet steps closer, her scent, wildflowers and rain, wrapping around me in the night air. "Your people seem surprised by my abilities." A wry smile touches her lips, almost as surprised as they are by your interest in a defective omega. My jaw tightens at her self-deprecation. "You've never been defective, Scarlet. You're rare and valuable, something Dante was too blind to see." The words emerge more intensely than intended, revealing feelings I've been struggling to contain. Her eyes widen slightly, her pulse visibly quickening at the side of her throat. For a breathless moment, I think she might step closer, but instead, she changes the subject. "Tell me about your history with Dante," she says softly. "Ruby mentioned he destroyed your family's territory, but there seems to be more to your conflict." The question reopens old wounds, but Scarlet deserves the truth if she's to understand what we're fighting for. My family's territory contained one of the oldest sacred groves in the region. I began, the painful memories surfacing with surprising clarity. When Dante's logging operation expanded, my father refused to sell. 3 months later, Dante presented legitimate documents to the territorial council showing our land had been legally transferred generations ago. Scarlet's expression darkens with understanding. Forged documents, like the ones I found in his archive. I nod, combined with magical coercion that affected the council members' judgment. By the time we gathered evidence of manipulation, the logging had already begun. My grandmother, the last true tree speaker in our family, died when they cut the ancient oak she was bonded to. I don't mention finding her body beside the stump, her life force drained with the tree's destruction. Some images are too painful to share. I'm sorry, Scarlet whispers, her empathy genuine and untainted by the pity I've grown to despise. Without thinking, I reach for her hand, needing the connection. The moment our skin touches, a jolt passes between us, stronger than before. Scarlet gasps softly, her eyes meeting mine with startled recognition. Neither of us pulls away. This connection between us, she begins hesitantly. Is it because of my tree-speaking ability? I wish I could give her a simple answer, but the truth is far more complex. Perhaps partially, I admit, but there's something else, something I don't fully understand yet. Her fingers tighten around mine, the simple contact, grounding me in a way I've never experienced before. We stand in silence before the great mother tree, neither willing to break the fragile moment with unnecessary words. Tomorrow will bring training, planning, and the weight of responsibility. But tonight, in this peaceful sanctuary, we allow ourselves this small connection that defies explanation or categorization. When we finally part ways for the night, something has shifted between us, a tentative trust that feels like the first tender shoots of something that could grow far stronger with time and care.
That's it, Victoria murmurs from somewhere outside this shared consciousness. Don't force it. Let the connection form naturally. 3 weeks have passed since our escape from the Forgotten Grove, each day filled with intensive training to develop my forest communication abilities. Today's lesson focuses on forest singing, using my voice to awaken dormant consciousness in trees that have grown silent over time. I breathe deeply, following the ancient rhythm of sap flowing through the oak's heartwood, then begin humming a melody that rises from somewhere deep inside me. The response is immediate and astonishing. The oak's consciousness brightens, expanding outward to touch neighboring trees that have stood silent for decades. One by one, they awaken, their awareness joining the network until the entire grove thrums with collective energy. Remarkable, Victoria whispers as I slowly withdraw from the connection. You've accomplished in weeks what takes most tree speakers years to master. Pride warms me, though I try not to let it show too obviously. For someone who spent her entire life being told she was defective, this validation feels almost too precious to acknowledge. Will it be enough? I ask, my thoughts turning to Dante and the approaching lunar logging ceremony. The trees in Timber Ridge territory have been subjected to decades of logging. Many may be too traumatized to respond. Victoria's ancient eyes hold mine, her expression grave yet hopeful. Forest singing isn't just about awakening consciousness. It's about reminding trees of their own power, their ability to resist destruction through collective action. As we walk back toward the main sanctuary, I spot Jasper deep in conversation with Tommy the Saw Rodriguez, a logging foreman who secretly provides information about Dante's operations. Tommy's arrival 3 days ago brought disturbing news. Dante has acquired an ancient artifact called the Axe of Severance, rumored to cut through any natural or magical protection. Jasper looks up as we approach, his silver eyes finding mine with the same electric awareness that has intensified with each passing day. Tommy's confirmed the ceremony location, Jasper says without preamble. Dante's chosen the hard oak clearing for the ritual. Victoria inhales sharply. The oldest standing tree in Timber Ridge territory. If he destroys it using the axe, the spiritual connection between wolves and that entire forest section will be permanently severed, Jasper finishes, his expression grim. Tommy adjusts his worn cap, looking uncomfortable. Word is they're looking for infiltrators. Anyone suspicious will be subjected to a truth spell before entering the ceremony grounds. Jasper and I exchange worried glances. A truth spell would immediately expose our intentions, making surprise impossible. Then we need to be beyond suspicion, I say slowly. We need to appear to be exactly what they expect. That evening, Jasper and I meet in the practice clearing to develop our strategy. The plan is ambitious. We'll pose as timber investors from a northern territory, using magically altered appearances to gain entry to the ceremony. Once inside, I'll use forest singing to awaken the hard oak while Jasper creates diversions using his shadow-traveling abilities. The key will be synchronizing our actions perfectly, Jasper explains. If we're even slightly out of alignment, the guards will isolate us before we can implement the full plan. To achieve the necessary synchronization, we need to practice consciousness meshing, a technique that allows tree speakers and their partners to share awareness across distance. It's an intimate process, requiring complete trust and vulnerability from both participants. We should start with basic resonance exercises, I suggest, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in my stomach. Jasper nods, coming to sit cross-legged opposite me. I've never done this before, he admits, a rare acknowledgement of uncertainty. Victoria says I need to open my mind completely to you. The implication hangs between us, he'll be exposing not just his thoughts but potentially his feelings as well. We could start with something simple, I offer. Just awareness of each other's location and basic intentions. Following Victoria's instructions, we position ourselves with knees touching, hands resting lightly on each other's forearms. The contact sends the now familiar current of awareness between us, though amplified by our deliberate focus. Close your eyes, I murmur. Imagine your consciousness as a light that can extend beyond your physical form. I reach for the forest network first, establishing a connection with the surrounding trees before carefully extending a tendril of awareness toward Jasper. His mind feels different from the trees, more complex, layered with emotions and memories that pulse beneath a controlled surface. It's okay, he says softly, sensing my hesitation. I trust you, Scarlet. I let my awareness merge with his, creating a gentle connection that allows basic thoughts and intentions to flow between us. The sensation is extraordinary, like suddenly gaining an extra set of senses that perceive the world through his perspective. I can feel his alertness, his analytical mind constantly assessing our surroundings, and beneath that, a fierce protectiveness that surrounds my presence in his consciousness. As our connection deepens, flashes of memory and emotion begin to transfer between us, my childhood frustration at being unable to shift, his determination after losing his family's territory, my humiliation during the rejection ceremony, his admiration when he first saw me sensing the tree's distress. The exchange becomes increasingly intense until I glimpse something Jasper has been carefully guarding, a powerful attraction tinged with confusion and something that feels dangerously close to devotion. His eyes snap open, breaking our connection so abruptly that I gasp. I'm sorry, he says, pulling his hands away. That was more than I intended to share. Heat floods my cheeks as I realize he must have felt my equally complicated feelings for him, the growing attraction I've been fighting since our days in the Forgotten Grove. Jasper, I begin, but he rises to his feet. We should take a break, he interrupts, his voice carefully controlled. This technique requires practice and boundaries. Though his words sting, I understand his caution. The mission must come first, our personal feelings can't interfere with stopping Dante's plans. We continue practicing over the following days, each session more controlled than the first, carefully avoiding the deeper emotional currents that threaten to overwhelm us. By the end of the week, we've developed a working connection that allows us to sense each other's locations and basic intentions without delving into private thoughts or feelings. The night before we're set to infiltrate the lunar logging ceremony, I stand alone beside the Great Mother Tree, seeking comfort from her ancient presence. Tomorrow, everything we've worked for will be tested. If we fail, Dante will permanently damage the bond between wolves and the forest.
My hands trembled slightly as I placed the final marker on our tactical map, the scent of pine resin and moonlight filtering through the sanctuary's ancient beams. The northern approach gives us the best chance, I explained to the gathered forest guardians, trying to ignore the way my senses kept reaching for Scarlet's distinctive fragrance, wild raspberries and morning dew, from where she stood across the table. Her presence had become like gravity to me, a constant pull I fought against with diminishing success. Tommy's intelligence confirms the ceremonial guards will be positioned primarily at the eastern perimeter, I continued, though my attention kept drifting to the way Scarlet's fingers traced the contours of the sacred grove on our map, her connection to the forest manifesting even in this simple gesture. Victoria's weathered voice broke through my distraction. The axe of severance changes everything. Its ancient magic was forged specifically to cut ties between our kind and the forest spirits. The room grew heavy with the weight of this revelation as Scarlet's eyes met mine across the table, her fear palpable yet underscored by a determination that made my wolf surge with pride. When the meeting concluded and the others filed out, Scarlet remained, her heartbeat a cadence I'd come to recognize as clearly as my own. "What if my abilities aren't enough?" she whispered, voicing the doubt I'd centered on her throughout the evening. I moved closer, careful to maintain the distance we'd silently agreed upon since that training session when our consciousness had merged too completely, revealing feelings neither of us was prepared to acknowledge. "The forest chose you, Scarlet," I said softly, watching the silver moonlight illuminate the auburn highlights in her hair. "I've seen ancient redwoods bend toward you as you pass, felt centuries-old oaks awaken at your call. Your connection isn't just rare, it's something the oldest druids only speak of in whispers." Her sense shifted subtly, fear giving way to something warmer as she raised her eyes to mine. "And if I fail them? If I fail everyone just like I failed my pack?" The vulnerability in her voice cut through me like a physical wound. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers grazing the back of her hand, the first deliberate contact we'd shared since our escape from the Forgotten Grove. The electric current that surged between us at that simple touch confirmed what my wolf had known since our first encounter in the lumber mill. This woman was mine in a way that transcended physical desire or pack politics. She was my balance, my complement, my fated mate. Her quick intake of breath told me she felt it too, this invisible bond pulling us toward a shared destiny. "Come with me," I said impulsively, needing suddenly to show her something I'd been saving. Leading her through winding corridors lined with living roots and luminescent fungi, I brought her to a small chamber deep within our sanctuary. Inside, a perfect miniature grove grew from the stone floor, each tiny tree a mirror of its ancient counterpart in the sacred forest. "This is the Heart Grove," I explained, watching her eyes widen in wonder. "It responds only to those the forest itself has chosen." As if responding to her presence, the miniature trees began to glow with soft blue light, the tiny branches reaching toward her like welcoming hands. "Touch them," I encouraged, my voice rougher than intended. When she knelt beside the grove, her fingers hovering just above the smallest sapling, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. The moment her skin made contact, the trees erupted in brilliant silver light, growing visibly stronger, their roots extending across the stone floor in intricate patterns that spelled out ancient forest words: protector, guardian, chosen. Her gasp of astonishment turned to tears of realization and something in me broke. I could no longer pretend, no longer deny what had been true since the moment I had scented her in the lumber mill. Kneeling beside her in the silver-blue glow of the responding trees, I finally spoke the truth we'd both been circling. I've known since I first saw you, sensing the trees' pain when no one else could hear them. You called to something in my soul, Scarlet. We are fated mates, rare souls whose gifts and spirits form perfect complements. The words hung between us like living things as her eyes, wide and vulnerable, searched mine for deception. "How can you be sure?" she whispered, her voice breaking on the question. "I'm defective. I can't shift. I'm just—" I caught her trembling hands in mine, the contact sending shockwaves of recognition through my entire being. "You are everything," I interrupted fiercely. "My wolf recognized yours the moment we met, even if you can't shift to show her. The forest recognized you when your own pack was too blind to see your worth." In the glowing light of the Heart Grove, I allowed her to see every emotion I'd carefully hidden, the admiration, the longing, the bone-deep certainty that she was the other half of my soul. "After tomorrow, everything changes," I continued, knowing time was running short. "I need you to know, whatever happens at the ceremony, that you're not facing it alone, not just as allies or friends, but as something ancient magic itself recognizes." Her scent bloomed with a complex mixture of fear, hope, and beneath it all, an answering call that made my wolf howl in recognition. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than I expected. "I've spent my life being told I'm worthless because of what I lack," she said, her fingers tightening around mine. "But with you, for the first time, I feel whole, not because you complete me, but because you see me completely." She took a deep breath, her next words hitting me with the force of a physical touch. "I love you, Jasper. I think I have since you warned me in the lumber mill, though I was too afraid to recognize it." The admission broke something loose in both of us. I pulled her against me, burying my face in her hair as her arms wrapped around my shoulders. "Whatever comes tomorrow," I promised against the soft skin of her temple, "we face it together, as equals, as partners." In the sacred light of the Heart Grove, surrounded by ancient magic that recognized what we were to each other, I felt her nod against my chest. "But first," she whispered, "we have a forest to save."
The scent of ceremonial smoke and pine resin filled my nostrils as I moved through the gathered wolves, my heart hammering against my ribs with each careful step. I kept my head lowered, the forest green cloak Ruby had provided concealing my face from curious glances. Beside me, Jasper moved with predatory grace, his body close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "Remember," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear, "wait for the third ceremonial horn before making your move." I nodded almost imperceptibly, my senses overwhelmed by the convergence of power in this ancient clearing. The lunar logging ceremony had drawn pack leaders from across the Pacific Northwest, their combined dominance hanging in the air like a physical weight. The massive trees surrounding us seemed to tremble with awareness of what was coming, their ancient consciousness reaching for mine with growing desperation. "They're frightened," I breathed to Jasper, fighting to keep my expression neutral as wolves in ceremonial attire passed by. "The trees know what he plans." A tall platform had been constructed at the clearing center, directly before the great mother tree whose massive trunk bore the scars of previous ceremonial cuts. The crowd parted suddenly, excited murmurs rippling through the gathered wolves as Dante ascended the platform, resplendent in ceremonial furs that emphasized his powerful frame. Behind him came Eleanor Nightshade, her sleek black hair adorned with silver ornaments that caught the moonlight as she moved with calculated grace. "Wolves of the Pacific Northwest," Dante's voice boomed across the clearing, "we gather beneath Luna's light to honor the ancient covenant between our kind and the forest that sustains us." The ceremonial words were familiar, but something in his tone sent chills down my spine. His eyes gleamed with barely concealed triumph as he reached for an object wrapped in ancient cloth. The first ceremonial horn sounded, its mournful tone echoing through the trees. I felt them shudder in response, their consciousness pressing more urgently against mine. For generations, Dante continued, we have taken only what the forest freely gives, living in harmony with the ancient spirits that dwell within these groves. The second horn sounded, and beside me, Jasper tensed, his scent sharpening with controlled aggression. Tonight, Dante proclaimed, unwrapping the cloth to reveal an axe of startling beauty, its blade gleaming with unnatural light, we strengthen that covenant through a new alliance. He turned to Eleanor, taking her hand with theatrical tenderness. My new mate and I will lead our combined territories into a future where the forest serves the true needs of wolf kind. The third horn sounded, its note hanging in the air like a final breath. Now! I stepped forward, letting the hood of my cloak fall back as I moved toward the platform. A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd as recognition dawned. The defective Omega, someone whispered. She was banished. I ignored them, focusing instead on the trees surrounding us, reaching for their ancient consciousness with everything Victoria had taught me. The forest does not serve, I called out, my voice stronger than I had ever heard it. It partners. It balances. It remembers. Dante's expression shifted from shock to fury as he recognized me. Seize her, he snarled, but before his guards could move, the clearing filled with a deep, resonant groaning as the ancient trees began to sway without wind. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the connection that flowed between me and the forest. When I spoke again, it wasn't just my voice that filled the clearing but the collective voice of centuries of growth and wisdom. For generations, Dante Blackwater has systematically destroyed sacred groves, forged territorial documents, and manipulated the council to seize lands that were never his to take. The trees around us began to glow with soft blue light, their branches reaching toward me in recognition. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jasper moving through the crowd, shadows clinging to him as he made his way toward the council members. This is absurd, Dante snarled, but I could sense the fear beneath his anger. This defective creature cannot even shift. Would you believe her forest fairy tales over your alpha? But the evidence was materializing around us as the trees projected images onto their illuminated bark, visions of secret meetings, forged documents, sacred groves reduced to ash. The axe of severance, I continued, pointing to the weapon in Dante's hands, is not meant for ceremony but for severing the spiritual connection between wolves and forest forever. Dante's eyes narrowed, calculation replacing his initial shock. With a movement too quick to counter, he raised the axe high, its blade catching moonlight and transforming it into something dark and corrupted. You're right about one thing, Scarlet, he snarled, voice dripping with contempt. This axe will sever ties, beginning with yours. The weapon descended in a brutal arc, not toward the tree but directly at me, releasing a wave of dark energy that cut through my forest connection like a physical wound. Pain exploded behind my eyes as I felt each tree's cry of anguish, their consciousness ripped from mine with violent force. I staggered, falling to my knees as the severing magic tore through me. In that moment of crisis, Jasper was suddenly beside me, his body sheltering mine as he reached for my hand. Together, he gasped, and I felt his shadow-traveling ability envelop us both. Our powers merged in an explosion of energy that sent ripples through the clearing. The pain receded as something new formed between us, a bond that transcended physical touch, our life forces intertwining like roots beneath soil. I could feel his heartbeat as clearly as my own, his thoughts brushing against my consciousness with startling intimacy. The partial bond of fated mates had formed in crisis, joining our abilities and our very life forces. Through our connected consciousness, I understood immediately, if one of us died, the other would follow. Dante's expression contorted with rage as he witnessed our transformation. No, he roared, raising the axe for another strike. But this time, when the severing energy flowed toward us, it met something it couldn't cut, the ancient, primal bond of true mates, strengthened by the forest's own blessing. The world around me transformed as Jasper's consciousness merged with mine, every sensation magnified beyond anything I'd ever experienced. I could feel the ancient heartbeat of the great mother tree as if it were my own, could taste the moonlight on my tongue like silver honey. Dante's face contorted with rage, his scent turning acrid with fear as he witnessed our transformation. "What is happening?" Eleanor shrieked, backing away from us as waves of forest magic rippled outward from where Jasper and I stood. "She's supposed to be defective." "She can't." Through our newly formed bond, I felt Jasper's fierce pride mingling with my own growing certainty. "I was never defective," I spoke, my voice carrying the resonance of 1,000 rustling leaves. "I was waiting. The forest was waiting." With our combined power flowing between us, I reached toward the forest network surrounding us. Every tree in the sacred grove responded at once, their consciousness joining with ours in a symphony of awareness. Through their connected roots, I touched every pack territory that Dante had stolen, every sacred grove he had violated. The images reflected on tree bark around the clearing shifted, becoming more vibrant, more undeniable, as the forest itself testified to his crimes. Solomon Cross stepped forward, his weathered face pale with shock as the magical influence Dante had held over him began to dissolve. "These accusations," he began, his voice strengthening as the corruption lifted, "must be investigated immediately." Dante's eyes darted between us and the council members, calculation giving way to desperation. "You fools," he snarled, raising the axe once more. "I'll end this forest magic nonsense permanently." He swung the ancient weapon not at us but at the massive trunk of the great mother tree behind him. The blade connected with living wood, releasing a thunderclap of destructive energy that reverberated through every connection in the forest network. Through our bond, I felt Jasper's pain echo my own as the severing magic threatened to tear apart the consciousness we joined with. The great mother tree shuddered, a deep groan of agony shaking the clearing as her ancient bark began to blacken around the axe's cut. "No!" I cried, feeling her suffering as my own. Without conscious thought, Jasper and I moved as one entity, our steps perfectly synchronized as we approached the platform. Dante raised the axe for another strike, but this time, the forest itself responded. Roots erupted from beneath the platform, wrapping around his ankles with surprising speed. Branches bent downward, reaching for the axe with gnarled wooden fingers. "Get off me," he snarled, slashing at the animated wood with increasingly desperate swings. I could feel the strain on our newly formed bond as we channeled more power than either of us was designed to hold. "We need to complete the bond," Jasper's voice whispered directly into my mind. "It's the only way to stabilize this connection before it tears us apart." In the midst of chaos, with Dante still struggling against the forest's restraint, Jasper's eyes met mine with perfect clarity. When our foreheads touched, the final barrier between our spirits dissolved. Memories flowed between us like water, his childhood exploring ancient groves, my years of isolation, his pain at losing his family's territory, my humiliation at Dante's rejection, each experience recognized and accepted completely. "I see you," we whispered simultaneously. "I choose you. I bind myself to you." The completed mate bond exploded outward with such force that several nearby wolves were knocked off their feet. The forest responded with a surge of power that flowed through us and directly into the great mother tree, healing the wound that Dante's axe had inflicted. "Dante Blackwater," I spoke, though it wasn't just my voice but the collective judgment of the forest speaking through me, "you who have broken sacred covenants, stolen ancestral lands, and attempted to sever the bond between wolf and forest, shall face the natural consequence of your actions." The roots and branches holding him suddenly withdrew, leaving him standing alone on the platform. Something was happening to him, something subtle at first but increasingly obvious. The dominance that had always radiated from him began to diminish, his powerful frame seeming to shrink slightly as his connection to his wolf weakened. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, dropping the axe as panic overtook his features. "What have you done?" Through our bond, Jasper's understanding flowed into my awareness. "The forest has not severed your connection," he explained, his voice carrying a gentleness that surprised me. "It has reflected it. As you attempted to separate wolves from their forest bond, so now your own wolf retreats from you, not forever, but until you learn to nurture rather than destroy." Dante fell to his knees, his breathing labored as he experienced for the first time the isolation he had inflicted on me and countless others. Eleanor backed away from him, her calculated devotion evaporating as his power waned. Solomon Cross approached slowly, flanked by other council members. "Dante Blackwater," he pronounced formally, "you are hereby stripped of your alpha status and territorial claims pending full investigation of the evidence presented here tonight." As council guards moved to take Dante into custody, I felt the forest's consciousness begin to withdraw from our bond, its purpose fulfilled for now. The intensity of our connection eased, though the mate bond remained, a golden thread of awareness connecting Jasper's mind to mine. His hand found mine once more as we turned to face the council together. "The forest has spoken through the Omega and the Guardian," Victoria Sterling announced. "An ancient balance has been restored. A new path begins." As dawn broke over the eastern mountains, I looked up at Jasper's face, seeing in his eyes the same wonder I felt coursing through me. Against all odds, we had found each other and changed the course of forest and pack alike. Sunlight filtered through new spring leaves as I stood at the edge of what was once barren ground, watching life emerge from soil that had known only destruction. 6 months had passed since the lunar logging ceremony, 6 months of healing and rebuilding. "The saplings are taking root well," I observed, kneeling to brush my fingers against a tiny Douglas fir. Even this small touch sent ripples of awareness through me, the sapling's consciousness responding to my presence with quiet recognition. Jasper's scent, pine and midnight rain, reached me before his footsteps, now permanently intertwined with my own through our completed bond. "Victoria says this grove will reach maturity faster than normal," he said, joining me. "Your influence accelerates their growth." I smiled, still not entirely comfortable with such acknowledgments. After years of being labeled defective, accepting my power sometimes felt like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. "They have strong motivation to grow," I replied. "This land remembers what it once was." The cleared hillside stretched before us, once the site of Dante's most aggressive logging operation, now a restoration project. Jasper's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining with practiced ease. Through our bond, I felt his pride and contentment wash over me. "The council session went well," he reported. "Solomon has officially recognized the Order of Grove Protectors as an independent regulatory body. We'll have full authority to oversee sustainable logging practices throughout the territories." I nodded, relief flowing through me. These political victories were equally important to ensuring lasting change. "And Ruby's proposal for the displaced wolves?" Jasper's smile widened. "Approved unanimously. Each pack affected by Dante's illegal land seizures will receive compensatory territory and resources for rebuilding." As we walked along the ridge, I spotted a solitary figure working at the far edge of the planting area, his once powerful frame now leaner, his movements carrying none of the dominant swagger I'd once associated with him. "He's still here," I murmured, watching Dante carefully position a young cedar sapling in freshly turned earth. "Every day since dawn," Jasper confirmed, his scent shifting with his own complicated feelings toward the former alpha. "The forest's justice continues to shape him." Dante's punishment had been fitting, the wolf who had destroyed sacred groves now tasked with nurturing new growth, his diminished connection to his wolf spirit gradually strengthening only as the forest itself healed under his care. I should speak with him, I decided, feeling Jasper's momentary surprise through our bond. Jasper squeezed my hand before releasing it. "I'll check the northern boundary markers," he said, understanding my need to do this alone. As I approached, Dante's scent reached me first, changed from overwhelming dominance, now earthy with honest labor and tinged with the green fragrance of growing things. "Guardian," he acknowledged formally, using my new title. "The soil here resists new growth," he reported, gesturing to the area he'd been working. "I've been supplementing it with compost from the old deadfall area." I knelt beside him, placing my palm flat against the earth. Through my connection with the forest, I could feel the land's lingering trauma, its resistance to renewal after decades of exploitation. "It remembers pain," I explained, closing my eyes to better sense the patterns beneath the surface. "But it also remembers what came before. The memory is still there, just buried deep." Dante watched silently as I communed with the resistant soil, encouraging ancient memories of abundance to rise through layers of compressed history. When I opened my eyes, tiny green shoots had already begun emerging around my spread fingers. "I never understood," Dante said quietly, "what the forest truly was. What it could be." I studied him, this wolf who had once seemed all-powerful to me, now humbled by natural justice. "Few do," I replied. "We were taught to see the forest as a resource rather than a partner." A silence stretched between us, filled with the sound of wind through branches. "I've been meaning to ask," Dante finally said, his voice rough with what might have been regret, "why you visit? You could have left me to work alone." The question surprised me. "Because healing isn't just about the forest," I answered truthfully. "It's about all of us. What happened here affected everyone, you included." His eyes met mine briefly before dropping again. "I would have destroyed everything," he acknowledged. "Not just the trees, but the connection itself. Out of greed. Out of fear of losing control." I nodded, neither condemning nor absolving him. "Yes. And now you're part of rebuilding it. That matters." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. "Scarlet. I was wrong about you. About what makes someone valuable to the pack." The acknowledgement was simple but significant. I inclined my head slightly. "We were all wrong about many things," I replied. "That's why we're learning to see differently now." Later, as Jasper and I stood before the council to formally accept our joint leadership of the new Order of Grove Protectors, I felt the weight of the silver medallions placed around our necks, symbols of a balance restored, of a partnership between packs and forest. Solomon Cross addressed the gathered representatives with renewed purpose. "From this day forward," he proclaimed, "no territorial decisions will be made without consultation with the Order. The Guardians will ensure that what we take from the forest is balanced by what we give in return." Jasper's hand found mine as we faced the assembled leaders, our unity a physical manifestation of the bridge we now embodied, between wolf and forest, between tradition and innovation. Through our bond, I felt his pride, his love, and beneath it all, a sense of rightness that echoed my own. As we stepped down, Ruby rushed forward to embrace me. "Who would have thought," she whispered, "that the defective Omega would end up saving us all?" I laughed, feeling Jasper's amusement echo through our bond. "Not defective," I corrected gently, watching as Victoria Sterling approached with a group of young wolves, the first students of our school for forest communication. "Just different." And difference, it turns out, is exactly what the forest needed all along. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Like, subscribe, and let me know, what would you change, and what do you like about a story? See you in the next chapters, my beloved listeners.